After our wedding, I had hoped for a peaceful start to our married life, free from outside interference. But I was wrong. My husband Alex's parents, Michael and Deborah, had always been vocal about our relationship, but I never imagined they would go so far as to impose themselves into our home. We had just returned from our honeymoon in Italy, our apartment still filled with half-unpacked suitcases, and I was exhausted from the long flight. That evening, Alex came home from work looking uneasy. His hesitance should have been a red flag, but I only realized something was off when he spoke. "My parents are coming to stay with us for a little while," he announced. I looked up from my plate. "For how long?" He scratched the back of his neck. "Indefinitely." I put my fork down, my appetite vanishing. "What?" He sighed, avoiding my gaze. "Mom wants to be around to help us settle in." I narrowed my eyes. "Settle in? We've been living together for a year. We don't need help settling in." That's when Alex hesitated, his gaze shifting to the side, like he was debating whether to tell me the full truth. I crossed my arms, waiting. Finally, he exhaled and admitted, "She wants to make sure you treat me right." I let out a sharp laugh, thinking he was joking. "You're serious?" He only nodded. "So, Deborah wanted to move into our home to supervise our marriage? To ensure I treated her grown adult son properly? And worse, Alex was letting her?" I told him this was a terrible idea. I explained that while visits were welcome, moving in was an entirely different matter. But the next evening, a car pulled up in front of our building, and I watched as Michael and Deborah began unloading full-size rolling suitcases. Not overnight bags, not small duffels, but luggage fit for an extended stay. I turned to Alex, waiting for him to set boundaries, to put an end to this madness. Instead, he mumbled, "We'll make it work." Oh! We were absolutely going to make it work. As they dragged their bags inside, Deborah wore a satisfied little smile, like she had won some unspoken battle. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I calmly took out my phone and dialed my mom. "Hey, Mom, how do you feel about moving in with us for a while?" There was a pause. "What?" "Yeah, Alex's parents are staying indefinitely. I figured you and Dad should, too. Just to keep things fair." Silence. Then in the background, my dad shouted, "We're packing." The moment I announced my parents' arrival, Deborah's smug expression vanished. Michael blinked, confused. "What?" he sputtered. I gave them my sweetest smile. "Well, if you two are here to make sure I treat Alex right, it's only fair that my parents come and make sure Alex treats me right." Deborah turned to Alex, expecting him to shut me down. Tell her this is ridiculous. But Alex, already overwhelmed, simply shrugged. "I mean, it is fair." I could have kissed him for that. The next morning, my parents arrived, fully prepared. My dad sprawled out on the couch in his underwear, flipping through TV channels like he owned the place. My mom immediately took over the kitchen, inspecting the fridge. "Oh, wow, Deborah," she remarked. "I see you put your soy milk where my egg should go. How do we solve this?" Deborah's jaw clenched. At breakfast, my dad loudly chewed his toast before turning to Michael. Michael, you chew really weird." Michael's face twitched. "Excuse me? I'm just saying. It's kind of annoying." By the second day, my mom had reorganized the closets. My dad had claimed the couch as his territory, and both of them had started hovering over Alex the same way Deborah had hovered over me. "Are you eating well, Alex?" my mom asked sweetly. "Are you getting enough sleep?" My dad added. Deborah was fuming. By the third night, she pulled me aside, her patience worn thin. "This is insane." I simply shrugged. "So, is moving into your son's home because you think his wife will mistreat him?" She stared at me, realizing in that moment that she had lost. But she didn't leave. If anything, she doubled down. On the fourth day, she escalated her passive aggressiveness. Whenever she saw dishes in the sink, she would sigh dramatically. If I was in the kitchen, she would comment, "I always made sure to cook fresh meals for my family. A microwave dinner doesn't feel very loving." If I stepped out to run errands, she would mutter to Alex, "Does she always leave this much? You must get lonely." Michael wasn't much better. Every time my dad sprawled out on the couch, he stiffened, as if my father was an intruder in my home, the home I paid for, The tension was suffocating. One night, I walked into our bedroom and found Alex sitting on the bed, rubbing his temples. "This is a lot," he admitted. I leaned against the doorframe. "It was fine when it was just your parents, though, right?" He sighed. "I get it. You were proving a point." I crossed my arms. "Do you get why I had to prove it?" He looked up at me, guilt flickering across his face. "Yeah." I waited. He exhaled. I should have told them no. Bingo. Deborah must have sensed she was losing ground, because the next morning she made her final move. While I was in the shower, she cornered Alex. "Are you truly happy?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. Alex frowned. "What?" "You just seem different, quieter, like something's wrong." I wasn't there, but I knew exactly how she operated. She would have spoken softly, sounding so reasonable, so loving, while planting the sharpest seed of doubt. When Alex tried to brush it off, she played her last card. "I think you rushed into this marriage." And just like that, she overplayed her hand. That night, Alex rolled over in bed and murmured, "I think my parents need to go home." I smiled. "Oh, you think?" The next morning, Alex sat both his parents down. "Mom, Dad, this isn't working. You need to go home." Deborah's mouth fell open. "Excuse me?" Michael's face turned red. "Where is this coming from?" Alex took a deep breath. "We love you both, but this isn't your home. You can visit, but living here isn't an option." Deborah turned to me, her eyes blazing. "This is her doing, isn't it?" Michael slammed his coffee cup onto the table. "We raised you. We sacrificed everything for you. And this is how you repay us." Alex's jaw tightened. "Dad, this isn't about being ungrateful." Michael snapped something under his breath, then stormed out of the apartment. Deborah followed, but not before turning back to Alex and spitting. "You'll regret this." And just like that, they were gone. For the first time in weeks, the apartment was blissfully silent. After Michael and Deborah left, I thought we had finally reclaimed our home. My parents were still around, but at this point, they were just enjoying themselves. My dad had claimed the couch as his personal throne, lounging comfortably as if he had lived there forever, while my mom delighted in experimenting with new recipes in her newly conquered kitchen. They weren't imposing. They were simply vibing. 2 days later, Alex received a text that made him sigh heavily. "Mom, we need to talk. Meet us at the cafe on 5th. He rubbed his temples. "I should probably go." I arched an eyebrow. "You sure? This feels like a trap." It absolutely was. An hour later, Alex walked through the door looking shaken. I put my book down. "What happened?" He dropped into a chair, rubbing his face. "They're selling their house." I blinked. "What?" "They already listed it. They're downsizing." His expression darkened. "They want to move into a condo." "Okay?" I prompted, still waiting for the punchline. "In our building." I laughed, convinced he was joking, but the look on his face told me otherwise. He handed me his phone, and I scrolled through the messages myself. "Mom, we need to be close to you. Families should stick together." "Mom, I'm already looking at a lovely 2-bedroom on your floor." "Mom, we'll finally be neighbors. Won't that be wonderful?" No, it would not be wonderful. I immediately dialed my mom. "Hey, you and Dad need to extend your stay." "Why? What's going on?" "Michael and Deborah are trying to move into our building." There was a brief pause. Then, in the background, my dad's voice rang out. "Hell no." There was no way in hell I was letting my in-laws live next door. If they wanted to play games, my parents and I were about to show them how it was really done. We moved quickly. My mom began inquiring about every available condo in the building, making it seem like there was an enormous surge of interest. She had no intention of actually buying one, but she wanted to make sure Deborah thought she had competition. Meanwhile, my dad took a more theatrical approach. Every time he interacted with the building manager, he was loud, chaotic, and deeply concerning. He wandered the halls shirtless, chewing on an unlit cigar. He didn't even smoke, loudly complaining about all the weirdos moving in. I tracked down the realtor Deborah was working with and flooded the market with fake inquiries from fake buyers. Within days, it looked like the condos were in such high demand that the prices shot up. 3 days later, Deborah called Alex. Her tone resigned. "Mom, we decided to stay in our house for now. The condos are overpriced." Mission accomplished. For a few weeks, things were blissfully quiet. I let myself believe we had won, that they had finally accepted defeat. Then one morning, Alex's phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach sink. It was his father. Alex answered on speaker. "Michael, I lost my job." "Michael, we're out of money." "Michael, we need a place to stay." Alex and I locked eyes. That's when I knew this nightmare wasn't over. Their sudden financial emergency hit, like a wrecking ball. After weeks of manipulation and failed schemes, they finally had the perfect excuse to move in. Alex paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. I mean, if they really lost everything. I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Are you seriously considering this?" He hesitated. "They're my parents," he muttered, "and they're not our responsibility." "They have nowhere else to go," he said, his voice strained. From the kitchen, my parents, who had been eavesdropping, stepped in. My dad snorted. "Oh, come on. They didn't lose everything." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" Without a word, my dad pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward us. Michael's recent golf club membership popped up, a very expensive membership, paid for just 2 weeks ago. Another screenshot, Deborah's boutique shopping spree. Thousands of dollars spent on luxury brands. And then, the final blow, a real estate listing. Their house had not actually sold yet. "They're lying," my mom said flatly. "They didn't lose their money. They're just trying to guilt-trip their way into your home because they want control." Alex turned pale. We immediately called Michael and Deborah over. They arrived smug, radiating the confidence of people who had already won. They settled into the couch like they belonged there. Deborah clasped her hands together, her expression dripping with artificial sympathy. "We know this is hard for you, honey, but it's just temporary." Alex sat stiffly, hands clenched into fists. He was shaking with barely contained anger. Then, in a voice so eerily calm that it sent chills down my spine, he said, "You lied." Michael frowned. "What?" "You didn't lose everything. You just wanted to force your way into our home." Deborah let out a nervous laugh. "That's not true." Alex held up my dad's phone. "Then explain this." He began scrolling through every purchase, every indulgence, every single lie. Michael's face turned red. "You've been spying on us?" I exploded. "Are you kidding me? You came here, lied, manipulated your son, and you have the nerve to act offended?" Deborah's voice wavered. "Alex, you know I only want to protect you." Alex's patience snapped. His voice, raw and furious, cut through the room. "Protect me from what?" Silence. Michael grabbed Deborah's hand and stood. "We don't have to take this." Alex stood, too, his face cold. "No, you don't. You can leave." Deborah's eyes filled with tears. "Honey, we're family." Alex's expression didn't soften. "No, you don't treat me like family. You treat me like property, like something you own. And I'm done." Michael scoffed. "You'll regret this." Alex stared him down. "No, Dad, I won't." And for the second time, they walked out. For the first time in weeks, the apartment was truly silent. Alex sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. I sat beside him, resting a hand on his back. "You okay?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then, finally, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "I should have done that years ago." The next morning, my parents started packing. They had never planned to stay forever. They were just waiting for Alex to wake up. Before leaving, my dad clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good, kid." My mom hugged him tight, whispering, "You deserve better." And for the first time in his life, I think Alex finally believed that. Michael and Deborah went low contact after that. At first, they sent Alex guilt-tripping texts, but when he stopped responding, they gave up. I wish I could say they apologized. They didn't. They never took responsibility for what they did. But Alex, he was free. And that was the best revenge of all.